All right, everybody, welcome back. Today's the big day. This is episode number 33 of Playing the Glass Bead Game. Michael, I think you and I have joined a special club. Here we go.
The 33 Club.
The 33 Club. In
So,
fact,
do they have? So,
I got
I know
I have a pin. I have a pin that arrived last night from the 33 Club.
What's the when you say the 33 Club? You mean the Disney 33 Club?
Well, it took me a while to figure out that that's what it was, but yes, that's what it was.
Who sent it to you?
You know who sent it to me.
That person sent it to you?
That person sent it. And there, with more communication in text than we've ever received. So I don't know if we'll talk about that during the show, but you and I.
So so you've been sitting on that. Is that a correct statement? Because we talked briefly. Normally you would tell.
I got it late last night.
But like you were said at late last night, you're like, I'm going to hold off until we start recording. Is that correct?
Well, by the time it came last night, I was kind of like done with phone talking and stuff for the day. And I knew if we got on the phone, it would probably be like an hour conversation about this because there's a lot of stuff here.
But you didn't even mention it this morning. Like
No.
you were just like coy. You were like, oh, let me tell you about this personal thing. And then because normally you would be the opposite. Like, what I've seen in the past is like, you're like so excited that everything else goes backwards a little bit and this goes for center stage. So what I'm seeing, like, and what I'm trying to figure out is there's a difference. There's a difference in how you're telling this. So I don't know exactly if that's because you're like more poised and you could just like shock me like that, or if maybe you're sitting on it a little bit longer. So I'm very excited.
It's really
and how this just came out, like the 33, and I was going to go to the 33 Club, and then you put out the pin before I mentioned it.
All right. So what's crazy about it is I hadn't decided yet if I was going to bring it up during the show or talk to you about it after the show. I was kind of waiting to see how things went. But then as soon as I said this is episode 33, and you were like, you mean we're in the 33 Club? I was like, fuck, I have to. And since you're going to talk about it anyway, it's just, I guess we're talking.
All right. So is this where you want to begin? Is this where we begin?
I have all kinds of interesting 33 information I was developing even before. I have 33 information. I have purple information. I have purple 33 information. I have confirmation on our suspicions of Burning Man. You say I have this thing that arrived last night that I don't even know what to do with exactly yet. You say you have lots of stuff to share. So I think, my friend, we're going to have a classic round of the Glass Bead Game today. So let's hear what you got. And then
all right. So I'll start with this. So I'll just do this and we'll kind of go back and forth. So today's the 14th, but I guess I'm still like, still a little birthday-ish, Mm-hmm. And so there was something, I guess I did this on my birthday and I was getting ready to put it away. And then I noticed that today we were having the recording. I'm like, I'm not gonna, I think this is kind of good. So there are a couple of things I want to show you. All right. So in my birthday, I forgot I had this. Do you have like one of these? Do they still do this?
I have that almost the exact same book from when I was a little girl that it's a girl, a pink one. Yes. So
this, like, I think they're like 7 entries. Like when you're the youngest, you get 7 entries. Like, my sister's is like pristine, I suppose, but there's some good, just random sort of things in there. So I was looking through it and I want to share some of the random things and we're just going to go with that.
All right.
So, Speaking of the 33 Club, there's another club. Like, are you familiar with this club?
I've heard of this before. Yes.
So you're familiar with it, like within the world of like relative deep state, highly sophisticated, webbed out MK Ultra program for everyone.
Yep.
Like this Center for Talented Youth, the Johns Hopkins Center for Talented Youth, has been identified like along with like a lot of the 1970s and 80s like testing programs for quote unquote gifted and talented.
Project Talent. Yeah.
Right. And so notable alumni include Lady Gaga, Sergey Brin, Zuck. He's definitely in there.
Oh, look,
Rowan Farrow.
Andrew Yang.
Like all the best.
Curtis Jarvin, that malicious mold bug. That's like this interesting guy that Michael Malice likes to interview a lot. He's kind of a kooky guy. All right, there's an interesting list here. Some obvious people, but a few that I wouldn't have suspected. Ronan Farrow's on there. Okay, continue. I'm sorry. I was just...
All right. And so this is a Johns Hopkins program that's been around since 1979. And so here are the places in which, like, sites where they do whatever it is they do. And so, like, it's Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, and it looks like there's a list of, I don't know, I'd say 13 different places. So we've got Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Franklin and Marshall. You got Dickinson, which is in Carlisle. Jesse's always talking about it. Then we've got Saratoga Springs, Los Angeles, Seattle, Princeton, Berkeley, Hong Kong, another, like, just kind of one in Pennsylvania, and then Dublin and Greece.
That's fascinating. The college that's in Los Angeles that's at Loyola Marymount University is a very interesting place. And I have, like, you know, when I talk about how I have these weird memory of places and I can't tell if it's like a dream or like some weird vision, but it's like another version of a real place that exists sort of at a different frequency on top of it. I have one of those about Loyola Marymount University. And then also a friend of my dad's who there's something about her that I'm very attracted to because she reminds me of someone else that has been influential in my life, right? And I hardly know her at all. I've had a few conversations with her, but she has this same air that other women who have been handlers of sorts in my life, but that I have really liked, has as well. And she's the curator for the art gallery at Loyola Marymount University.
So I agree with you. Like, almost from reverse engineering, you could look at each of those places and assume that they're significant, particularly the ones which you. So that being said, I found this in the book.
Yep. Yep.
So there's my diploma. Diploma. So I've got that. This is actually me receiving my diploma. This is me graduating high school.
Oh, look at that handsome lad.
Look at that. Okay. All right. So now there's this. This one is very, very interesting.
I also want to just say that math and like basically what that Center for Talented Youth at Johns Hopkins is the recruiting center for the glass bead players. And we are we are starting the glass bead game from the beginning because Laura hadn't read any of it and I had sort of gotten through a certain part of it, but I hadn't finished it all, and we just decided that we would move through it more smoothly if we read it together. So we'd started over it, and it's interesting. I'm picking up a lot more things than I did the first round through, mostly because we now have experience playing on a certain level, and it's exactly that. Right. At a certain point, mathematics became more of the language of the glass bead game than music, which was where it had started. Right. It turned into more mathematics and philology, which is basically comparative linguistics, comparing one language to another. Right. And being able to sort of stand them up against each other so that you have that mathematical and verbal dexterity is evidence of your being qualified to the highest level of glass bead play.
They didn't accept me. That's what that sheet of paper says is thanks, but no thanks.
Oh, that's interesting.
Well, my guess is there's like a testing program. There's a testing that they go through for whatever it is they're looking for. And then there's a response. Now, just because you get like the letter doesn't mean they didn't put you in the top secret one, but I can go and see this. So, okay, I want to keep on going with this because this year, if you notice, it was 1985.
Yeah.
So it says, Michael, this is to certify that Michael participated in the search.
Yep.
That's all it says. That doesn't tell you anything, right? That's like that. Well, okay. So also this is 1985. I found this in here. I don't remember participating in any search. Okay. So I want to be on the record for that. So then there's this.
What does it say? Howard County Film Festival.
So this was a film festival. And I kind of remember this. And in the language arts class, I was in 7th grade. We made a video. We made a movie, okay? And we filmed it. So this is 1985. So think about like nowadays, like, oh, you made a movie? Well, yeah, no big deal because everyone's got a friggin' camera on their phone. 1985, like no one had phones. 1985, like hardly anyone had like a movie. The camcorder was still like 5 years, like before it became commonplace. And so it was a big deal. It was kind of a big deal.
Mhm.
And we made this movie, and it was, we submitted it, like we did it through a class project, and then it was submitted to the county. So I went to a middle school. It was Oakland Mills Middle School, and there may have been like 10 or 15 middle schools in the county. And then there was a film festival for, I think, the entire like middle school, high school. And our film was submitted. So this is the same year. Yep. And it's a certificate of participation, just like the other one. So this is where the shit comes from. Columbia, Maryland is where a lot of these ideas begin with, which are now normal and current in our modern world. We could see them being tested out in the 70s and 80s as these certificates of participation, which are 10 years beyond it becoming the norm, like you see it here. So anyway, so we're there. So the question is the buildup. Mike, what are you getting to? The buildup is, what the fuck was this movie which you made? I remember this. I remember being slightly, I don't want to say embarrassed, but realizing that what we participated, what we put into this film festival was on a very, very different caliber than every other person who had a movie into it, because it was like a field trip. I remember we went to this high school and everyone saw all the different videos and there was voting and stuff like that. And I just remember thinking like, ours isn't quite like everyone else's. So here we go. I'm going to go and tell you. So keep in mind, I'm in seventh grade. I'm in this government sort of town of Columbia, not like obvious government, but behind the scenes testing Columbia. I was just participant in the Johns Hopkins youth sort of thing. And I make this strange video or movie or film, 10-minute film with some classmates. And so this here, let's see if you can read this. What does that say?
Oh, the Emmy Award for the Best Actor to Michael Wann.
Look at the name of what it's called.
The Strange Happening.
In seventh grade, I did the same fucking thing as the Stranger Things. I was Mike. I was Mike in the Strange Happening in the Johns Hopkins motherfucking research magic sort of, what's it called? And then I go and I watch, the Stranger Things with Mike in a town, Hawkins, and all this sort of stuff. So I got that. That's what I got. That's what I'm leading with for today.
All right. So I got a couple things to say to that, right? So first of all, Hawkins is very much like Columbia or Chatsworth.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Now, first of all, let's just pull back up that list for a second of people that went to that school.
All right.
Or people that went to this kind of thing.
Alumni.
So the alumni. So these are the people that probably got accepted to the program.
Well, right? Yes, definitely. If you're an alumni, you went through the program. So we have these, they're official going through the programmers.
Right. So we have these people, and then there's people who officially do not get accepted into the program and they're moved into something else, right? And the evidence I have for that is like, I've had this conversation with my father before, right?
All right.
About like, do you like any possibility that like you've ever been picked up by an intelligence agency or a think tank or something like that based on, he's like, no, you're ridiculous, Emily. I interviewed for the CIA once. They rejected me. And then just shortly after that, I got recruited by a program called Project Crossroads Africa that had nothing to do with the CIA. And then that sort of led to what I did next. Right. So that's, it was literally right after that. So interview for the CIA, not hiring you. And then someone else comes along. We'd like to invite you to join Project Crossroads Africa. Right. Of course. Right. And my father had been my father had been in the Model UN form in high school as well. Right. Okay. So for him. So that. And then the last thing I'm going to say, because you were talking about this film stuff, I watched a really interesting documentary at the suggestion of one of our shared correspondents through email and listeners of the show. And he recommended I watch this documentary that's available now on Prime about Val Kilmer. Right. And he was wanting me to watch it with this idea in mind that he thinks it would be interesting for Val Kilmer and I to have a conversation, and then to have that conversation filmed and made into a documentary. So I was like, okay, we've talked about Val Kilmer before. He's one of those people that I'm like, there's something else going on with this guy besides, you know, the obvious level, and there's certain connections based on him being from Chatsworth and some of the other things he's been involved in. So I watched the documentary, and I have a whole different appreciation for Val Kilmer and who he is. And, you know, he's from Chatsworth, and he was really into acting from the time he was really young. He's a very classically trained actor. He was the youngest person ever accepted to Juilliard. I didn't think that, basically. I thought he's one of these guys who fell into acting because he's a handsome guy, and he just happened to be a little bit more adept at it than the other handsome guys that sometimes get pulled into that. But he was obsessed with movie making and video filming since he was a kid, with all the older equipment, like kind of like what you're saying. And he and his brothers did all of this filmmaking and winning of awards and blah, 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 right? And he goes on and he has this incredibly interesting career, but I was not aware of like what a unique character off camera he really was, right? And unfortunately, in this documentary, there was no coverage of where my most important intersection with him is. It was just mentioned in passing, and that is the movie Salt and Sea, right? And I would have loved to hear more of his thoughts about that, because that's where I really had an aha moment about Val Kilmer kind of thing for myself. But this is an incredibly interesting, fascinating, richly textured person who is very, very different than I think the other people in Hollywood in a lot of ways, right? And I agree with this person. I do think a conversation with it between he and I would be quite interesting based on the levels that he displays in this movie, because mostly we're looking at his video. He's always made home movies about everything he was doing and stuff like that, right? So there's this really rich like thing where you see his impression of what's going on in his career from sort of behind the scenes and whatnot. Unfortunately, I have barely the ability to make everything that I need to make happen for my regular life go. And this, you know, this would require a lot of work on I thought this person was kind of offering to set this in motion. And basically he just said, okay, you're interested. Great. Here's what you should do. You know what I mean? And I don't have the space in my life right now for that. If somebody else wanted to put that together, I'd be happy to show up, do it, and bring full force and energy to it. But it gave me this other impression of Val Kilmer. And I think you should watch the documentary based on what you just shared about this movie that you made and whatnot. And this was something he was kind of doing, and it was sort of his entree into this other realm. And the characters he has played and the way each one of them is really a part of him in some very unique way, I think it was really, really moving documentary. And especially with what he's going through right now, one wonders why he is going through this. Like, is there something deeply, is there someone or some energy or entity that was so deeply bothered by this person of Val Kilmer and the way he is in the world that they literally had to take his voice away, right? And whether that be earthly people or some other entity and energy out there, right? It's hard you want to hug him and love him, and it's hard to look at him and listen to him in the condition that he is right now. But that makes the film so rich, right? But all those things were coming to my mind when you were talking about this. And yes, like these planned communities like Chatsworth, like Columbia, like Hawkins in the film, there's always a particle accelerator, there's always Russian collusion, right? And then there's always the awful 80s clothes and the wonderful 80s music, right? Or whatever, or however your viewpoint is on them. But yes, like there's this was going on all over the country in different communities, and there was these people that were sort of mainlined, like your Lady Gagas, like your Andrew Yangs, like your Zuckerbergs, right? And that was whatever they decide. I don't know if they knew from the very beginning what they were going to do with these people, but I think there was this awareness that these ones can definitely be put in front of everybody and paraded around. But really, this more interesting stuff is going to go on with these other kids, right? In some of these other kinds of places. And I think Val Kilmer walks a line between those things that's really interesting, right? So anywho, those were kind of what came up while you were sharing that. But I think it's fascinating, and it doesn't surprise me at all. It's kind of like, when I found the box of documents from Tavistock, right, or whatever, that basically confirmed all the things that I had been opining about and making stories up about and whatever, right? And so did those things lead to your where you are now, or have we told such a convincing story that the evidence backfilled, and there it is, because you don't even remember it?
I'm putting a little bit more credence to the a backfilling story as being very, very, very possible. But exactly what backfilling is, I'm very open to. Like whether backfilling is like whatever, like, backfilling could occur from a lot of different things if we're going to question like reality. The reason I say that is because in the past week, I've seen these other things, or I thought about other pieces of information which has been revealed relatively recently, which is like, oh, wow, that's a weird connection, which was always there. And I'm like, well, did that connection just was backfilled? Like I'm watching the backfilling happening in real life, because so I might be a little bit less nebulous in a moment and tell you what I'm talking about with that, but we can move on from there. It's like is this a backfilling? That's the question I think I want to leave with. This is like, am I witnessing backfilling, and to what or is this like something else? So
okay,